hopefully monster MLB slate to talk about. After a wild day of lots of DFS last night and lots of injuries and all kinds of stuff in the NFL. Actually made money in NFL a little bit thanks to some of the showdowns, but not much, and didn't do so well in baseball. But we're going to go through this baseball slate, go game by game, same way Sheets and I usually do. I'm going to talk about what I like and what I don't like. So let's get into it. All right, so basically this Chicago and Washington game, I have interest in both offenses. The only thing I'm a little concerned with is the weather isn't ideal for hitting, and just going to end up which way the wind ends up pointing is going to have like a pretty determining factor for me. And, it's not going to be very warm, but it is an incredible matchup for both teams. You have bad pitching and bad bullpens on both sides right now. You can see the total that Saberson has is a little bit higher. I actually like the over in this game as of right now. Washington game, I'm going to make a note for my bets. The bets have been on fire, by the way, 4 for 4 last night in the NFL. The NFL ones especially, I think I'm now like 13 out of my last 15 in the NFL bets. So I would advise you guys to take a look at those. Those are your premium members anyway. No interest in either pitching for me. I could see an argument for maybe trying to take a shot on Rutledge. But I just don't think you need to go down that far today. And if you do, there are some other options. But Rutledge, you could put him on the list, but he's further down for me. And I think both these offenses are definitely strong plays. I wouldn't be playing guys like Benintendi as a one-off. I think you'll have some ownership in this game, mostly on the White Sox side, as you can see. Our early projections that Goldie's got the White Sox pretty much significantly higher than Washington. And I like both offenses here. So I am going to get exposure to both sides. As of right now, it's one of the games that I'm targeting for hitting the most. So moving over to Toronto and New York, we've got Kikuchi and Schmidt, both pretty good pitchers. I think Schmidt is definitely viable on the lower tier. Probably the most appealing, the one you feel most comfortable with. I don't love trying to target Toronto in general, especially while they're trying to win games. But I think that you could certainly make an argument for Schmidt. Not going to get to Kikuchi too much at this price. There's other guys who I'd rather pay up or down for, but I think that I don't think it's like the worst idea in the world. But I do have Schmidt as one of the cheap options that I would certainly be considering. It's a tough slate. You can see there's great stuff to spend up for, but there's also, and they're in some tough matchups. But there's also some guys down here in the lower mid tier that just are decent enough to consider. But we're gonna have to figure out how lineup construction goes at the end of this. All right, moving on to Philly and Atlanta. We have Strider on the mound, which means, as usual, Strider will be one of the most, although not the most popular pitcher today. And I want to point out a few reasons why you might consider Strider. First of all, I do have Strider and Snell at the top as my favorite two pitchers. The problem is, one, his price. The Braves also have no reason to let him go nuts. So, 90 pitches, is that enough for a guy at 12-8? Maybe if things go right. It's Philadelphia. It's not like a bad offense. So I'm really sort of struggling with what to do with the Strider side of things. I do have him tagged right now as a guy I'm probably going to use, but I'm not sure that I'm going to end up with that by the time the day is done. So I currently have Strider as definitely in play. Atlanta gets to face, it's a bullpen game, but it's sort of a weird one because they're going to have Sanchez and Lorenzen in there tonight. And both those guys have been good enough to where I think you could argue not to play the Braves. Here's the problem, though. You look at the Braves' ownership. I don't really know why Philly's projecting for that much ownership. The Braves are going to be just unowned because of the way the pitching sets up tonight, which has to make the Braves a priority to try to get to in some lineups. Again, nothing to play for, really. There is a little bit of a rivalry thing with Philadelphia, but how many pitches will they let Strider throw and what kind of lineup do they release tonight is going to dictate what I want to do with them. But I do think the Braves are at low ownership, obviously always strongly in play, even against two decent enough pitchers that are going to be sharing the workload. I think we could definitely play some Braves here and get away with it. So I do have the Braves tagged, but I don't necessarily, it's more because they're going to be so low owned that I have them tagged. And here we go, right off the bat, a lot of stuff to be interested in very early on this day. So we've got this game here. I don't even have the actual, let's just see, here we go. Let's get the projections. There we go. Logan Allen and Alec Marsh. Alec Marsh off the bench, who's been great, but I don't want to take him against Cleveland at 5,700. We used him on some small slates to some pretty good effect. Thanks to Sheets for that one. He's pointed it out, and we've gotten good results from Marsh a lot. I don't expect today to go as well. Cleveland should be the most popular team, and I think they are going to be. And I like the KC side also. This is one of the better hitting games, 78 degrees with like 8-mile-an-hour winds blowing out to right field. I think this is a spot where you definitely could take some Cleveland bats and feel good about it. The problem is, if there is chalk on this slate, this is the chalk. You can see everybody in Cleveland basically projected above 10%, according to Goldie. And even KC getting a little bit of love, although not as much. Because it's a bullpen game and this situation has worked out okay for KC over the last few starts, maybe you could argue for just fading this, and that's fine. I do think Cleveland shows up pretty well here. And I also think that the KC is in play against Logan Allen. I'm not particularly interested in Allen myself. It's just a matter of, it's a big slate. Do you really want to get all your money invested on a fairly chalky Cleveland and a somewhat owned KC? So they're both decent on my list, but because of the ownership, may look a different direction. They make things work money-wise a lot. You can see, the Arias price, Jimenez price, Quan even. These guys are just all cheap enough where we can play the stud pitchers, so they're gonna be a little more popular today. And you can see the result of that as the most popular team right now for Cleveland. If they really are the most popular team, I think that you could argue for a fade for sure. Pittsburgh at Chicago. So my other guy that I like at the low end, and he's been bad his last 2 starts, is Javier Assad. He pitched against Pittsburgh about 3 weeks ago. He put up 28 fantasy points. He's 5,900. We know there's a range of outcomes. He had a bad start in Colorado. Big deal. I don't care. He's 5,900. There is enough upside. And even if he doesn't hit his full upside and he only ends up with like 12, 14 fantasy points, that might be good enough to allow you to get a stack like the Braves in tonight. So I do think the Assad thing is kind of interesting, maybe a little bit more than people think. And I am going to temporarily tag him as one of my preferred lower end options. It's a tougher matchup for Falter, but I could see you trying to do something similar there, just in the interest of trying to get the Braves and Dodgers or something, or the Astros in, because it is hard to get them in and there aren't that many cheap options. So I do think Assad at 5,900 is certainly in play here. I also like the Cubs. The problem is the pricing makes it really tough, which is what everyone's going to find. You're going to see some ownership for the Pirates. I don't mind the Pirates on the other side. They're another cheap offense that you can get to. But, we're still waiting. The wind always changes in Chicago right now. I've got crosswinds at 10 miles an hour. If it changes to point outwards, I will definitely be a lot heavier on this game, as will most of the field. So I didn't get to the Cubs as much as I'd like. As you can see, the prices are really tricky. You've got Morel at 51, Wisdom, who might only get 1 at that, Bellinger 63, Horner's 57, Swanson 52. Like, they're just expensive. So I do like the Cubs, but it's probably going to be their pricing that keeps me off of them. And I don't mind Pittsburgh as well, but again, just not my favorite spots on this slate. Milwaukee and St. Louis. Milwaukee let everyone down last night. You have the bullpen game with McGill and Ray against St. Louis. This game feels like a stay away for me. I don't mind running it back with Milwaukee after they let everybody down last night. They project reasonably well, and they're going to have some ownership depending on where you look. You can see different ownerships in the morning. That's always going to happen. But if Tyrone Taylor is really batting 5th, he's going to be 3K. I think that's totally interesting. He's also been staying in the games more lately and starting against righties, batting 9th. But if he's up to 5th in the lineup at 3K, and you've got Monasterio at 3,100, so there is some value to mix in with the obvious Contreras play. But I think this is, and then I love Adames tonight. So I'm open to Milwaukee more so than I am St. Louis. And I think that's pretty much all I'll have in this game. And it's not a priority for me as of yet, but I may reconsider that as the day goes on. All right, Tanner Houck and Eovaldi for Texas did some good stuff getting against Eovaldi last time. I believe it was last time out. Texas it's the same story as always here. Houck, he's actually been probably a little better of a pitcher than most people think. But it's Texas. There's a lot of good offense there that's going to be completely unowned. Also very, very expensive. So if you can get to Texas, I would suggest getting some exposure against Houck here. The problem is, again, how do we fit these guys in? And that's going to come up to down to lineup builds. We'll talk about that more at 6 Eastern. But this is a first look, and I just wanted to say that for what it's worth, I do really like Texas. I put them in the same category as Houston and to the Braves to some extent. It's just how do I get to them? It's a little tricky. All right, let's talk about Houston and Baltimore in a big real life game. Hunter Brown, Kyle Gibson. Gibson's been much better for the most part. Hunter Brown, I still believe in the talent level, although I didn't end up putting him down. I'm actually going to make a note to not exclude Hunter Brown in my lineups tonight. He hasn't been great lately. Baltimore is obviously a decent offense, but 8,500, no one's going to be using him. Kind of interested in maybe taking a stab there, but nothing priority wise. I do think Houston is an awesome stack today. It's just really hard to afford them. You see Goldie's ownership projections because how do we get these guys in? The 63, 62, 48, 58. People hate playing Abreu. He's 4K, although he's actually been much better the second half of the year than the first for power. Bregman's crazy expensive. You have to use Maldonado basically. And it's just a really tough stack to get in unless they bring somebody else in who's super cheap that I literally don't even know of that's on the roster. Because it's just a really, really tough stack to get in, even if you spend down at pitching. Having said that, though, I do like them. And for what it's worth, I like the matchup with them against Gibson, but I also want to point out that Baltimore has a very strong bullpen, and just as a team that doesn't give up as many runs as you might think very often. All right, moving over to Seattle and Oakland. I like Castillo, but he's probably going to be behind the other guys for me just a little bit. He actually hasn't pitched great against this Oakland team. He's 11-3 for a guy whose strikeouts sometimes come and go. I think the play for me in this game is going to be Blackburn at the lower end. I do like the price on Blackburn. I think that it's a similar type of play as Schmidt. Goldie was early on the Blackburn is better than people think, and I actually agree with that. So I am going to be getting myself some Paul Blackburn tonight. It's not overwhelmingly exciting, but that is my favorite play probably in this game. Not really getting to the offenses here. If I did, it would be to Seattle, but I just think I'm going to probably stay away and just focus on Blackburn from that game. And even him, I'm not sure he makes my final lineups because I've got a number of guys to decide between. Arizona and San Francisco. Boy, look, SaberSim with no respect for Zach Gallen. Look at that, a 4.8 run total according to SaberSim. I think it's really like a 3.7 run total. I'm going to do a quick check here and just see if the roof is open for some reason, because that's a weird number to see. And usually they don't open it until the very end of the year, but we're getting pretty close to that. So let's just see Diamondback's roof information, and we will double check that it's closed tonight. It's open tonight. Okay. That's going to make me look at this game a little bit differently. I don't expect Alex Cobb to have as much of a leash. I like Arizona now. I was not planning on playing them. I like the roof being open. The ball travels much better there. And Cobb, I think you could take some shots with Arizona. They're not a huge priority, but you do have some potential value-ish plays. Gurriel's 3,700, certainly reasonable. 2,800 for Alec Thomas, who's been really good to me for whatever reason this year. Jace Peterson. There's just some cheap plays that's going to make this stack be able to go. And I was at the game where Alex Cobb nearly threw the no-hitter, and they threw 131 pitches, and we just knew he wouldn't pitch much after that. For what it's worth, though, it is San Francisco is sort of in must-win territory, so they're going to try and put their best foot forward and their best relievers in and all that stuff. But I still think that the Diamondbacks are in play, and I like Gallen. I don't think Gallen and at a $1,500 discount from Castillo, I don't think they're that different plays. So I actually think I'd put Gallen and Castillo in the same level, but I might be more into Gallen just for the price savings. Castillo at 11.3 gets a little bit tough for me. If I want to spend up, I'm probably going to be doing it on the guys in this game. Here's where you're going to get your mega chalk. And hey, look, we don't get to say anything about Blake Snell being inconsistent anymore and all these things. After this year, Blake Snell is going to win the Cy Young, I believe. And there's pretty much nothing we can do about it. He's facing the Rockies tonight. He's got the best matchup. He's got as good a matchup as you can have. He's currently projected at 40% ownership, which is really, really high. Really hard not to have him as the top pitcher, just considering he's 2,200 cheaper than Strider, who's facing the Phillies. He's pitching in San Diego, good pitching conditions. I am absolutely going to probably play Snell. I don't know if I'll have as much as the field, but in my biggest buy-in as of right now, I probably would be playing Snell because I like the matchup a little too much. As far as the hitting goes here, I think that San Diego is completely viable. You saw what they did last night, put up a big number. And they're going to be low owned as well. Just another one of those things I got to point out. Outside of Profar and Grisham, who are probably going to be at the back end of the lineup, I guess Campusano too, everybody's really expensive, and it's just hard to get them in. So if I had to take a pick I would rather get Houston in. I would rather get Atlanta in, and then I would go San Diego after them, along with Texas. Those are pretty similar to me. Just hard to get them in. Texas, I might like a little bit better. They're pretty close, San Diego and Texas. All right, talking about the last game, Dodgers and Tigers. Dodgers seem to be just crushing that run total every day now. We're going to have a bullpen-ish game against the Dodgers, but it's not a good bullpen, and it's a very strong Dodger team that I expect to show up tonight if they, for whoever does end up playing. And you're going to see that another one of these expensive teams that's really hard to get to, so they are not going to project for much ownership. The one thing is, you have to worry about some pinch hit risk, but Hayward is cheap, who should be in there. Peralta is cheap, who should be in there. Rojas has, I don't know, he found a power streak, so you can use him as part of a 5-man. And if you just play those three with like a Will Smith and Mookie, or a JD and Mookie, or a JD and Freeman, or a Mookie and Freeman, I think that's probably the way you could stack it and get away with it. Just going to be tricky to do because, again, most of the hitters you really want are very expensive, and for good reason. They produce all year long. So I've got my priorities to sum things up real quickly. At the high end, I have Snell and Strider with Gallen and Castillo in consideration. At the low end, I have Blackburn, Assad with Brown and Schmidt in consideration. Brown's a little bit more expensive, but I'm including him in that category. I have the Chicago-Washington game as a game I want to target. Atlanta, Houston, Texas are all fit if I can get to them, I'll try to get to them. As of right now, we're not getting enough value for me to really like them. I have the Dodgers as my priority one offensively, assuming that they're good to go. I will have Houston or Texas if I can find a way to get them. So the Dodgers with Chicago, Washington, and then the other teams, all in consideration. Atlanta, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Texas, Houston, Arizona are the ones I'm deciding between. So that's a quick first look, guys. We appreciate you guys all staying with us. Please give us the like so we can keep doing these videos for free. We will be live at 6 Eastern and going over the rest of the details of this slate. Really fun slate to play. So I'm ready for it. I'm looking forward to it. And one night we don't have football this week. So let's get it tonight, guys. Let's make some money. Let's get it, as Brody says. And good luck, everybody. Don't forget to click the like so we can keep doing these videos.